Okay, good evening everyone. Welcome back. This is Sham Kaguria. Now, before I start the discussion, please do let me know if I'm audible to you so that we can start. Give me a thumbs up, say why yes, anything is okay with me. But do confirm that I'm audible to you. Done. Thanks a lot. So let's start. Let's start. So we are done with agriculture sector. We will discuss the questions on agriculture sector, not now, after some time. So let me start with the next chapter now. Concept of industries as well as services. Concept of industries as well as services. Let's start. What we'll be discussing under this chapter? We'll start with industrial policies and we'll have a discussion on LPG reforms. You must have heard of LPG, again, not liquid petroleum gas, liberalization, the privatization and globalization. We'll have a discussion on that. Okay. Next, we'll also have a disinvestment policy discussion. Okay, idea regarding, right, or discussion regarding disinvestment policy. And third one is MSME sector. We'll have a discussion. All right, we have already seen definition, but what is the importance? What are the concerns? What are the reforms? We'll discuss. We'll also discuss aggregates, IIP and ICI. Then we'll have a discussion on services sector and finally some of the important reforms. For example, have you heard of a Make in India initiative? Make in India initiative. Right, Startup India initiative, etc. We'll have a discussion under this chapter. Okay, now let me start. So after independence, after independence, the first industrial policy was announced by the government in 1948. First industrial policy. And what is the industrial policy? Very simple. Government of India will come out with a policy, right, regarding how many industries are open for private sector participation, what is the licensing requirement, right, whether these private sector is allowed into defense sector or not, etc. So we announced an industrial policy for the first time after independence in the year 1948. And we proposed the model of mixed economy. Please remember this, important. We proposed the model of mixed economy. What do you mean by mixed economy? Very simple idea. Mixed economy means we will have participation of the private sector as well as government. The basic idea here, we will have the participation of private sector as well as the government. That is a basic model of basic idea of a mixed economy. And to have this implementation of model of mixed economy, we divided all the industries into four categories. To ensure that this will be implemented, we divided all the industries into four categories. What are the four categories? The first category will consist of those industries which are the monopoly of government of India. Monopoly means what? Only government of India will be setting up, right, companies in the industry. For example, railways. Please tell me, think of it. Until very recently, not right now, but until very recently, can we say it was only government of India which was operating railways in India? Think of it. Am I okay? Am I clear with this? Until very recently, can we say it was only government of India which was operating railways in India? But now, right now, what is the situation? Many private sector companies have been allowed to operate railways. Many private sector companies are there in, right, let's say, railway sector. So argument was, in 1948, government of India identified some sectors and said the government will be the only entity or will be the only authority which will have companies in these sectors, such as arms and ammunitions, atomic energy, and railways. Now, please tell me, please think of it and tell me. Very recently, have you come across the articles regarding government of India allowing even private sector in atomic energy sector? Let me know. If you have not read the article, check it. Type in Google, you will understand what I'm talking about. Very recently, government of India has started thinking. It has started considering allowing private sector to enter into the atomic energy, right? Related to atomic energy, right? It has not yet allowed. It is not there. Only government of India is allowed now. But it is thinking, right? If you don't trust me, go to Google and type, you will get an article on it. Okay, so Government of India said first category means all the industries set up by the government, private sector not allowed. Second, right, the second category was a mixed sector. In mixed sector, whatever private sector companies are operating, for example, coal, iron, etc., whatever companies are operating, private sector companies are operating, we will allow them to continue. We will allow them to continue. But if Government of India needs, they will set up the companies, or they can simply go for nationalization of these companies. That was the second category. Third category, government will not be setting up any industry here. Government will not set up any company. Only private sector companies will be operating. Right? For example, sugar sector, cement sector, cotton, etc. And finally, the fourth category. Finally, the fourth category, all those industries which were not covered under the earlier three categories will be kept in the fourth category. All the industries which will not be covered in all the earlier categories will be kept in the fourth category. For example, can I say agriculture sector? Let me know. Before you start asking, sir, any example of a fourth category, can I say agriculture sector? Right? Agriculture sector, neither government says only I will be present, nor government says you require to take a license, nor government says I will also be present along with the private sector. No, it is not covered anywhere. So in the fourth category, agriculture sector, cooperatives are related, etc., all of them were kept in the fourth category. So these are the four classifications. These are the four classifications. First one, only Government of India will operate. Second one, private sector, if it is there, we will allow them to continue. But in the future, any new units required will be set up by the Government of India. Third one, right, a private sector will be allowed. Government of India will not interfere here. Again, will not set up units. And the fourth one, all the other industries which were not covered earlier three categories will be kept in the fourth category. In fact, Government of India at this point of time said, Government of India at this point of time said, we will not be going for nationalization for at least next 10 years. We will not consider nationalization of the any industry at least for the next 10 years. That was a viewpoint in the industrial policy in 1948. After that, we announced Industrial Development Regulation Act. Industries or Industrial Development and Regulation Act, IDRA, Industrial Development Regulation Act. Now, what do you mean by Industrial Development Regulation Act of 1951? Please have a look at the provisions here. Point number one. All the industries which were covered under the IDRA Act, now any private sector entity which is operating in these industries, they will be registered with the government. They will have to get their registration done with the government. So point number one. Any industry which is covered under IDRA and a private sector is present in the industry, they will have to be registered with the government. Point number two, if this private sector company wants to invest, if this private sector company wants to expand, if this private sector company wants to acquire any company, right? So these kind of decisions, they will have to take prior permission of the government. They will have to take the permission of the government. Only then they will be allowed to conduct these kind of activities. Point number three, if the company's affairs were not up to the mark, if the company is not performing correctly, and right, the Government of India finds out that right, these companies are all not operating correctly, then the government will conduct an inquiry against the company. For example, many of you ask me, sir, what do you mean by affairs of the company, conduct of the company? For example, imagine you are a cement manufacturer. Imagine you are a cement manufacturer. Now, don't you think if you do not produce, right, as per the capacity that you have, if you do not produce, it will have an impact on economy? Please think of it and answer to me. Imagine you're a cement manufacturer, or let's say a steel manufacturer. You have a capacity to produce certain amount, but for whatever reason, you're not producing that much amount. Will it have an impact on Indian economy? Of course, yes. Cement supply is important, steel supply is important. So government says, if the affairs of the company are not up to the mark, then I will conduct inquiry against you. Next, if the company has given a wrong information, okay, company has given a wrong information to get a license from the government, then government can simply cancel the license given to the company. If you have given a false information, if you have given wrong data to the government to get the license, then the government can cancel your license. Okay, next one. Government could recommend reforms for a particular industry, then the companies, private sector companies, right, basically will not have any option but to follow those guidelines, follow those reforms. Right? For example, Government of India will say you will have to implement this measure now. Private sector company says no, I will not do that. Then the government says, great, right? Then I will take over the management of the company. Means I will take over the functioning of the company. You will not have any powers, any role in the operations of the company now. Government will be empowered to regulate or control the supply, the distribution, as well as the prices of any commodity that it fit is requires or is requiring of these kind of interventions. So Government of India, let's say hypothetically says, I'm a private sector, I will have to sell this bottle at 50 rupees, then I will not have any option but to sell it at 50 rupees. If government will say that I will have to produce only 500 units of this bottle, I will not have any option but to produce only 500 units of the bottle. So government was given the power to regulate, control, supply, distribution, prices of these manufactured products which were listed under IDRA. Done. So these are certain very important provisions of Industries Development and Regulation Act of 1951. Any problem so far? Can we go forward? Any problem so far? Any problem? Please do let me know. Is it applicable to foreign companies? At this particular point of time, most of the foreign companies were not allowed to come into India. Foreign companies were very, very, very right few in case of India. It is applicable to any private sector company. But please understand, after independence, it was targeting private sector, and at this point of time, private sector was mainly composed of domestic private sector companies. Okay. Sir, what if pandemic hits? Then how volatility would be addressed with respect to food processing? Arey Baba, why are you mixing all these concepts? Okay. Last point of IRDA, government was basically having the power to regulate how many goods will be produced, right? If a good is listed under IDRA, what will the price of this good, provided it is covered under IDRA. That's a basic idea of the regulation over pricing, distribution, etc. Okay, let me go forward. Industrial policy 1956, very famous. Industrial policy 1956, very, very famous. Some of you are asking, do we need to remember all of this? My recommendation is please do. Please do. Why? I'll tell you. There are many industrial policies. You don't have to remember all of them, but at least some of them you will require. For example, have you come across the term license Raj in the last 1 week in the newspaper? Let me see. Have you come across the term license Raj in the last 1 week in the newspaper? This shows whether you are reading correctly or not. Trust me. If you have not come across the term license Raj in the last 1 week, right, in newspapers, then my dear, please pick up the slack. You are not reading current affairs correctly. Why? I'll tell you. Government of India, Government of India said, if you are importing laptops, you need to take a license. Right? That is where right the expert says this is nothing but a license Raj. And the idea of a license Raj in case of India, the product, right? It was a product of industrial policy of 1956. It was the product of industrial policy of 1956, right? So what is the idea of a license Raj? Simple. License Raj means that for lot of the things that you do, you will require licenses from Government of India. For lot of these things, for let's say importing, for manufacturing, for producing, by selling, for a lot of these activities, you need to take a license of Government of India. And trust me, this argument was introduced in industrial policy in 1956. What is the problem with the license Raj? Licensing requirement means you will have to deal with bureaucrats, correct? Government officials. Now tell me, is there scope of corruption in the license Raj? Let me know. Is there a scope of corruption in the license Raj? Is there a problem with respect to favoritism? I hope you understand. Government of India says in case of laptops, importing of laptops, we will issue licenses very quickly. What if you're asking them to pay certain charges to get licenses? That can lead to, right, lesser transparency. What if bigger companies are issued license very quickly, smaller companies are issued licenses very very late? So scope of favoritism, that is biased policy making, scope of corruption, scope of opaqueness in policy making, all of that was basically the outcome of license Raj. And that's the reason post 1991, I'll come to that policy also. Post 1991, we have tried to address it. Post 1991, we have tried to address the issue of licensing in India. But by Government of India asking now the market to take a license if they want to import a laptop, if they want to import PC. So now the question is that many experts are saying, are we returning back to license Raj? Again, this is the argument, right? Whether you have returned to it or not, you will have to decide based on future course of events that are going to take place. So I hope you have understood what I was trying to convey here. Now come back to the discussion, industrial policy of 1956. Now in the industrial policy of 1956, very important, the industries were classified into three schedules. Now understand this very carefully. Industries were classified into three schedules. That is Schedule A, Schedule B, and Schedule C. Okay, so the industries were classified into three schedules, A, B, and C. And now the important changes will happen. What is the important change? Most of the important industries now were brought under the complete control of Government of India. Monopoly of Government of India. What do you mean by monopoly? There were two students who are asking what is monopoly. This is, I believe this is around right fifth or sixth weekend that you are appearing economics. Monopoly, right? Earlier we have discussed this. Monopoly means a single supplier. So Schedule A, 17 industries were brought under the monopoly of Government of India. Second, Schedule B, it included 12 industries where development of new units would be taken only by the government. Only by the government. I'm sorry, will be taken up only by the government, new units. But private sector participation, if there is any private sector participation, they would allow this to continue. Schedule C included all the remaining industries which were not covered under Schedule A as well as the Schedule B. Now, please think of it. Tell me, what do you think is the main important or most important difference between industrial policy of 1948, industrial policy of 1956? Think of it. Please tell me, what do you think is the most important difference between industrial policy of 1948 and 56? Don't you think in case of industrial policy of 1956, large number of industries were brought under monopoly of Government of India? Correct or not? Compared to earlier system, large number of industries were brought under the monopoly of Government of India, which means private sector participation in these industries was reduced, right? And government participation in these industries increased to a very great extent. And this policy is the result why we have large public sector entities today. Right? We have lot of these companies owned by Government of India, Steel Authority of India, right? Aluminium Authority, right? Defense sector, we have lot of these authorities. Civil aviation, we had right earlier one company. So I hope you understand Because of this industrial policy, the participation of government of India or the control of government of India in these industries increased suddenly, monopoly. Whereas in case of other industries, that is a private sector participation was limited to other industries only. That is the importance of industrial policy of 1956. And in the industrial policy of 1956 itself, the idea of a licensing requirement was introduced by the government. Idea of licensing requirement was introduced by the government of India. Right. In fact, there is one very famous book which talks about why industrial policy of 1956 actually led to a lot of corruption in the system, led to a lot of let's say bureaucratic hurdles in the system, led to red tapeism in the system. Okay. But again, for UPSC, all of that is not required for you. This much is more than sufficient. So simple. Schedule A, 17 industries. Schedule B, 12 industries. And whatever was not covered in A and B was basically kept under Schedule C. Right? Was basically kept under Schedule C. Right? Again, many of you are asking, sir, any example of Schedule C? Agriculture. Agriculture, right? Agriculture, you will see agriculture, government will not control it. Agriculture, right? Agriculture, cooperative, all of them will be kept under Schedule C. Okay. So what is the name of the book? I'll tell you the name of the book, but again, please understand, if you're not interested in beyond GS paper economics 3, not at all needed. There is a book by the name of Accidental India. I'll repeat, there is a book in the name of Accidental India, right? It is written by Mr. Manishankar Iyer, right? Mr. Shankar. Very, very famous book, very nice book, Accidental India. And again, this is my request to you, advice to you, not an order. Have the habit of reading other books apart from whatever is needed for your IAS. I hope you understand this. Have the habit of reading apart from what is actually needed for IAS. Again, develop that habit. It will help you a lot. It will help you a lot. Right? The book's name is Accidental India. In fact, in that book, the whole process is given why this actually led to a lot of corruption. Right? For example, it says MSME sector. Idea of MSME sector licensing was introduced in IP 1956. Right? It was introduced in IP 1956. But in case of MSME sector, earlier it was not called as MSME. Earlier this was called as small scale industry, SSI. Is it okay? Earlier this was not called as MSME. It was called as small scale industry. In fact, very nicely the author, Mr. Iyer showcases that how this actually led to a lot of corruption in the system. For example, he talks about, again, this is not needed for UPSC. Quickly, 1 minute, I'll tell you a story. Come back to the discussion. He says, earlier there was a lot of restriction regarding manufacturing of video cassettes. But the machinery that you would require to manufacture this video cassette, so these were not manufactured in India. We were forced to import that machinery. But when you imported that machinery, the value of the machinery was already above the threshold that was actually decided by government of India, which means the whole process started with undervaluation of the machinery. Now you will import the machinery to manufacture video cassettes. The limit that was decided was just a fraction of the capacity to manufacture using that machinery, which means if I basically follow government guideline, I'll be meeting the threshold of manufacturing video cassettes in a span of 10 days. But I will have this machine for full year. So what I will do? I will take multiple licenses. I'll take multiple licenses for the same machinery. I will take multiple licenses so that if the limit is, let's say, 100 cassettes, I will meet that limit within 1 week, but I will have to manufacture for the second week. So I'll take second license. I want to manufacture for the third week. I'll take one more license. So in this way, in order to ensure that throughout the year I'll manufacture, I would give lot of bribes, have multiple licenses so that I'll be manufacturing throughout the year. So I hope you understand why this problem of license Raj, or what was the issue regarding license Raj, why it was so much hated in the Indian economy. So again, is it required for UPSC? Absolutely no. Right? I hope you understand. Is it required for UPSC? Absolutely no. All of these are not required for UPSC. But I would recommend if you get time, please read these kind of books. It will help you in writing answers. Okay, next, come to situation 1991. Sir, after 1956, were there any industrial policies? Yes, there was an industrial policy of 1973, industrial policy of 1980, but all those industrial policies for GS paper are not required. So first important one is a 48, second most important one is a 1956, third one, which is also equally important, the 1991 industrial policy. Now, before understanding why did we announce, right? Why did we announce industrial policy of 1991? What was the situation in 1991? Understand it. What was the situation in Indian economy? First one, there was a crisis in Gulf. There was a crisis in Gulf. That is basically in the Middle East region. There was a war between two countries, Kuwait and Iran. Kuwait and Iran, there was war between these two countries. And please understand what is a connection to India. Some of you will be very much right, fascinated. Okay, there is a war between two countries in the Middle East, but how it is connected to India? Why it will cause right? Why it will add to crisis in India? Very simple, two reasons. First one, lot of crude oil, just like today, was imported earlier also. India historically has been dependent on import of crude oil. So when two Middle Eastern countries, which are known for again oil only, will go to war with each other, please tell me what will happen to the prices in the international market for crude oil. So don't you think in the international market, the prices of crude oil will start increasing? I hope you understand. Prices will start increasing. So we are import dependent. Prices will start rising. So what will happen to the import bill? Import bill, right, will automatically start increasing. So forex reserves started going out. Point number two, lot of Indians were actually working in the Middle East region. Now, because of war, they lost their jobs. And when they lose their jobs, when they lose their right assets because of the war, etc., don't you think remittances which will come to India will also be affected? In fact, let me connect it to a movie. How many of you have seen the movie Airlift? Let me see. Again, if you have not seen, nothing wrong. Right? Don't say, sir, is it important for UPSC? Absolutely no. Absolutely no. But if you have seen the movie Airlift, they basically are discussing in the Airlift, they are talking about same Iraq versus Kuwait, the war between two countries. So again, if you have not seen, nothing wrong with it. Argument is simple, right? The people who were earning there, they used to send lot of remittances. The remittances were cut off, and second, right, basically the crude oil prices started increasing. So inflow of dollar lesser, outflow of dollar increasing. That's it. So that's a perfect recipe for disaster. Second, okay, before I go forward, generally if you are reading newspapers, any country that faces a BOP crisis, the IMF will tell this country to devalue their currency. Correct? Have you come across this? Any country that faces a BOP crisis, IMF generally asks this country to devalue the currency, devalue the domestic currency. For example, sir, any example in the context of India where have we devalued the currency? I told you yesterday, sorry, not yesterday, last week. Last week, not yesterday. Yesterday was for weekday batch. So I told you last week, 1991, we faced a BOP crisis. Faced a BOP crisis. And IMF at that point of time asked to devalue our currency, devalue the domestic currency. Why? Please understand this. Can I simply say if you devalue the currency, imports will become costlier, so imports might get affected? Please think and keep on answering now. If you devalue your currency, domestic currency, imports will become costlier. Can the imports inflow into the country get affected? Point number two, your exports will become more competitive. Can you start exporting more and more? So that will try to address the issue of trade balance that a country is facing. But more importantly, apart from this, more importantly, there is a inflow of money from Non-residents, that's also very important. There could be inflow of money from non-residents. That is, imagine in future you'll become, right, you'll become very rich, you'll go settle in USA, right? You are there in USA, and because of an issue, let's say there is a devaluation, right, of Indian rupee, which means, can I now say, if the devaluation is done from $1 is equal to 50 rupees to $1 is equal to 60 rupees, it will provide you more comfort to invest in rupees in India now? Yes or no? With the devaluation of the domestic currency, Are Baba, think carefully. Some of you are saying no, please think carefully. With the devaluation of the domestic currency, don't you think for same dollar you can get more assets in India? At least now, is the logic okay? You'll be able to purchase more assets in India. If you keep deposits in India in terms of rupee deposits, will you not get more interest for the same dollar? If you purchase asset when devaluation happens, will you not be spending less dollars now? Answer is yes. That is the reason, right? We'll be able to attract, right? We'll be able to attract more and more dollars like this. That's the reason whenever the devaluation is done, this is also one of the objectives, right? Because please understand, import and export, both are transactions, right? You will give goods, you will get money. You will get the goods, you will give money, right? There are two transactions which are happening. But in case of remittances, it is a transfer payment. All of you are okay? This is basically one-sided flow, right? That is the reason these kind of initiatives are taken. Okay, so please understand the logic behind it. Fiscal deficit of government of India was very high. Inflation was also very high. Interest payment liability of government of India was more than one third of the total expenditure incurred. More than one third of the total expenditure in a year, government used to pay because of interest only. Today it is how much? Around 20%. Back in 1991, it was more than 1.5 times. It was almost 1.8 times compared to what it was today. Right? So balance of payments, the forex reserves were fast depleting. We had only sufficient amount of forex reserves to pay for import of 15 days. The performance of many of the public sector units was also not very good. Many of them were incurring losses, which means, again, many of you will ask me, sir, why should I read this statement, last statement? Imagine Air India. I'll take a very simple example. Imagine Air India. Air India incurs a loss, which means government of India has to provide assistance to Air India. All of you will agree with me. If Air India, again, not today, don't say, sir, today it is private sector. Imagine couple of years ago, right? Let's say 2010. Air India incurs a loss, which is owned by government of India, which means government of India will have to use its taxpayers' money to provide assistance to Air India. Apply the same logic to public sector units. Many of the public sector units, despite being only entities in their sector, were incurring losses, which means government, rather than earning dividend from this, was actually spending money on this. So that is the precise reason the situation in 1991, it was basically very grave situation. And that is when government of India announced a three-step reform or a three-step measure. One is called as liberalization, second one is called as privatization, third one is called as globalization. We'll go one by one. Liberalization, privatization, and globalization. Now, what do you mean by liberalization? But please understand the difference between liberalization and privatization. Many of the students get confused there itself. Let me give you a very basic idea. Liberalization means whatever regulations were imposed by the government, regulations will be withdrawn. Is it okay? I'll repeat my statement. Liberalization means whatever regulations were imposed by the government, those regulations will be withdrawn. Whereas a privatization means government will start selling ownership of the companies. Both are different. Do not be confused. So liberalization means The government, whatever controls they have imposed, whatever regulations they have imposed, either directly or indirectly, these regulations or controls will be taken away by the government. For example, sir, what do you mean by that? Let me give a very simple example. Do you remember industrial policy of 1956? In industrial policy of 1956, I said most of the industries were brought under the monopoly of government of India. Meaning what? Only government of India shall set up, I repeat, only government of India shall set up a company in this industry. Now, what if I say government of India is already operating, along with government of India, even private sector will be allowed to operate. Even private sector will be allowed to enter into this industry. Can we say we are removing the regulations? Can we say we are removing the controls on the economy? So argument is very simple here. In case of a liberalization, it is basically the deregulation that was done by the government. Whatever regulatory controls government had imposed over a period of time, these regulations were imposed. For example, in industrial sector, now over a period of time, most of the industries have been deregulated. Private sector is allowed to participate. Whereas earlier, most of the industries, only government of India had the monopoly. Second one, financial sector. Earlier, the foreign banks were not allowed to operate in India. Now, government of India said even foreign banks will be allowed to enter into India. Banks were not allowed to go to stock market and issue shares. Now, government of India said banks can simply go to, again, banks means public sector banks. They can go to the market, issue shares and raise capital. Earlier, foreign institutional investors were not allowed to invest in the stock market. Now, these are allowed to invest in the stock market. So, in these way, whatever regulatory controls were imposed by the government earlier, these kind of regulatory controls were withdrawn. In case of taxation, lot of reforms have been implemented. Government set up committees. For example, there's a very famous committee in 1990s, Raja Chalia Committee. Very old committee. Please do not by heart the recommendations, irrelevant now. But remember, there was a committee which was set up by the government, Raja Chalia Committee. So government of India set up Raja Chalia Committee and made lot of changes in how taxes are imposed, taxes are collected, how taxes are calculated, how many slabs should be there, etc., etc. So lot of these tax reforms have been implemented over a period of time under liberalization. In case of foreign exchange reforms, do you remember this? Government implemented a dual exchange rate. After the 1993, we have implemented a concept of floating, that is managed floating exchange rate. So please remember the sequence here. Please remember the sequence. From 1948 till 1970s, we used to have a pegging with, pegging means connection with the pound, right? Then we shifted to the concept of a basket exchange rate. That is, RBI used to calculate exchange rate using a basket of currencies. Then we shifted to the LERMS, Liberalized Exchange Rate Management System. Then we shifted to Managed Floating Rate. And today we are simply following only the Managed Floating Exchange Rate. So even in case of foreign exchange reforms, rupee was devalued twice in year of 1991, and after that we implemented LERMS, and after that we have implemented managed floating exchange rate, under which for majority period of the time the market will determine the exchange rate. In case of trade policy, earlier for importing licensing was required. So please look at it. Earlier, for importing, licensing was required. You will have to take a license and then you will be allowed to import. So Government of India abolished this requirement of import licensing. Now, does anybody have a doubt regarding what you mean by import licensing? Then I'll ask you to read the article regarding laptop, PCs, etc. So the import licensing requirements were abolished now. And right, have a look at this. Even on the exports, certain taxes were imposed, duties were imposed. We abolished taxes on export. That is, export duties were withdrawn so that we'll be able to promote more and more exports. So these are some of the reforms that were implemented by the government under the head of liberalization. Next is privatization. What reforms we have implemented under the concept of privatization? Privatization simply means ownership of the entities under the government will be reduced. How much is the ownership of government of India in these entities? Ownership will be reduced. For example, please do let me know. Think of it and please do let me know. If the ownership will come down from 100% to 90%, right? Is it not meaning that ownership of government of India in this entity it has come down? What if it is reduced from 100% to 0%? That also means ownership has come down. What if it is reduced from 100% to 51%? That also means ownership has come down. So under the concept of privatization, right, the government, there was in fact a committee which was set up by the government, Rangarajan Committee. Rangarajan Committee back in 1990s recommended that we should go for disinvestment policy. We should go for disinvestment policy. What do you mean by disinvestment? Under the policy of disinvestment, government will sell the ownership of their companies and generate revenue. So privatization simply means ownership of entities under the government of India would actually reduce. What does it actually mean? It will reduce the presence of government of India in the form of public sector. For example, let me know, with complete privatization, with government of India selling Air India, I repeat, with government of India selling Air India, can I say government of India's presence, that is public sector presence in civil aviation market has contracted now? Right? Many of you are asking, what do you mean by statement one? Please participate now. Last 1 hour is there. Please participate, and we'll discuss for right some more time. Then we'll go back to questions on agriculture sector, which I'm yet to cover. So please participate now. Can I say with government of India selling Air India to Tata company? Can I say the PSU presence, that is public sector presence in civil aviation market, has contracted? Of course, yes. So it will lead to contraction of public sector. It will, right, basically mean we are conducting disinvestment. It will also mean we are promoting more and more participation of the private sector. That is basically idea of a privatization. Now let me have a discussion regarding government organization, disinvestment, national monetization policy, and the national infrastructure pipeline. All these are very important. Understand? Let's go point by point here. First one, whenever you talk about government organization, the government organizations are present in three forms. Understand this. Government organizations are present in three forms. There are three different ways through which government organizations are set up. One is a departmental undertaking or else government undertaking. Second one is a public corporation. Third one is government company. Now, what is the basic idea? Please remember this. Departmental undertakings are part of the government itself. These are part of the government. For example, please do let me know, is the Ministry of Railways part of Government of India? Let me know, is the Ministry of Railways a part of Government of India or not? What about a postal department? Is it part of the government of India? So whenever you say departmental undertaking or ministerial undertaking, it is a part of the government. That is, government will appoint a department, will appoint a ministry which will take care of a particular sector, which will take care of a particular sector. That is called as a departmental undertaking. And when you say departmental undertaking and this is a part of the government, don't you think there is no difference between ministry and government of India? Difference in the sense, can I say, can government of India directly interfere in the Ministry of Railways and change policies? Think of it. When I say there is no difference, this is what I mean. Right? Don't say, sir, ministry is different, government is different. What I actually mean is, can Prime Minister direct Railway Minister to implement certain policies? Can Cabinet ensure railways will work in a particular way? Can Cabinet ensure post will work in a particular way? Of course, yes. Some of you are saying no. My dear, yes. Right? Railways is not a constitutional body. I hope you understand. Railways is not a constitutional body. And is the polity lecture over for all of you? Think of it. Is the polity lecture over for all of you? Let me know either yes or no. Why? I'll use a statement. I will use the statement now. If it is not, it will be over. It will be covered later. Please don't worry. There's a statement in polity. Ministers work at the pleasure of Prime Minister. I hope you understand. Ministers will work at the pleasure of the Prime Minister. That is, if the Prime Minister wants me to work as a minister, they can do it. If the Prime Minister wants you to be appointed as a minister, they can do it. So I hope you understand the interference of the government in departmental undertaking is very direct. Interference means policy making, implementation of the policy, decision making, or else the best example, who will allocate the funds for railways? Think of it. Who will allocate the funds for new projects in the railways? Don't you think it is the government? That is through finance ministry. So that is the meaning. That's what I'm trying to convey to you people. Interference is very much a direct here, right? There is no line of differentiation, right? It is part of the government itself. But come to the extreme side, government companies. Come to the extreme side, government companies, right? Government companies are set up under Companies Act. Government companies are established under Companies Act. Earlier it was Companies Act of 1956. Today it is Companies Act of 2013. Now please tell me, do you think Coal India Limited is part and parcel of Government of India? Let me know. Do you think Coal India Limited is it part of Government of India? Answer is no. Government is a different entity. Coal India Limited is a different entity. I hope you understand. Coal India Limited is a different entity. Government is different entity. No doubt, Government of India owns Coal India. I hope you understand. No doubt, majority of Coal India Limited is owned by Government of India. But, right, legally speaking, Coal India Limited is different. Government of India is a different. And point number two, Coal India Limited, what is the function? What is the function of Coal India Limited? There is a separate law regarding it. A separate document is there as to see how functioning of Coal India Limited is supposed to be done. What is the area they are supposed to function? How the appointment has to be done? And more importantly, don't you think government companies, these are listed companies? Think of it. Right? Don't you think more importantly, look at the names, you'll understand. Right? So government companies, can I say that basically these are listed companies? So I hope you understand the interference of the government in case of government companies is very less. It is very, very low. And they cannot directly interfere because how Coal India Limited is supposed to work, there is a different law for it. How the head has to be appointed, right? What is supposed to be their salary, etc., etc. Separate management is there for it. Coal India Limited will take their decision to spend money. They will generate money, right? So that is basically the idea of a government company, right? That is basically government company. How they have different identity, my dear. If Coal India Limited, right, is a drag to Supreme Court of India. In fact, if you're reading newspapers, you will know about it. There is a friction between Coal India Limited and Competition Commission of India. If you have read the newspapers, that's where your current affairs becomes so important. So Coal India Limited, it is dragged to Supreme Court of India. Does it mean it is Government of India which has been dragged to Supreme Court of India? Think of it. Those who are asking how both are different, please tell me no. If Supreme Court of India will give a judgment against Coal India Limited, does it mean it is a judgment against It is a judgment against the Government of India? No, it is Coal India Limited. It has its own separate identity. Legally, CIL is different. Government of India is different. Okay. Now, between departmental undertaking and a government company, there is a mix and match, which is called as a public corporation. Right? Between these two extremes, there is one more form which is called as a public corporation. What is a public corporation? These are established with passage of law by Government of India. Statutory corporations. Public corporations are nothing but statutory corporations. That is, Government of India through a law will set up these entities. For example, Food Corporation of India. Government of India passed an act back in 1965 and we set up Food Corporation of India. What about NABFID? National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development. Government passed a law, became an act, and we set up NABFID. So I hope you understand. Public corporations are nothing but statutory corporations. These are established by the government, through a passage of the law. And the functioning of the public corporation is very simple. When the government will set up this, right, or will pass this act, in the act they will simply say what is supposed to be the function of this organization, what they are supposed to do, right, how the appointment of the people has to be done, how much will be the ownership of Government of India, etc., etc. All of them will be given in the law, that is in the act of public corporation. And public corporations are not listed. Usually the government companies are listed. Is it okay? Public corporations are not listed. Have you seen the shares of Food Corporation of India? Let me know. Have you seen shares of Food Corporation of India? You will not see that. Right? It is completely owned by Government of India. But on the other side, can you purchase the shares of CIL? Yes. Can you sell the shares of CIL? Yes. What about NABFID? If you remember the data, you will see the answer now. 100% of NABFID is owned by Government of India. Right? So these are not listed. Government companies are listed. Done? So these are the three ways or three forms of government organizations. Now, why should you learn all of it? There's a concept of disinvestment. There's a concept of disinvestment. Now, what is this disinvestment? Definition is very simple. Using disinvestment or through the policy of disinvestment, government will sell the ownership of companies. Right? In what way we can conduct the disinvestment? These are the different ways. First one is called as minority stake sale. First one is called as minority stake sale. In case of minority stake sale, government will sell certain amount of ownership but will still control more than 51% or at least 51% ownership in the company. I'll repeat the statement. I will repeat the statement. In case of minority stake sale or minority disinvestment, government will sell certain ownership but will continue to have at least 51% in the company. For example, let's take a simple example. Imagine there's a company, Government of India right now has 80% ownership in the company. Government will sell 10%, reducing the ownership to 70%. But now tell me, who has the management control over the company? Management control means who takes the decisions for the company. And always remember this, anybody who has more than 51% ownership will have the control. Anybody with more than 51% will have the control. So government earlier had 80%, now will sell 10%, will have 70%. Now, even after sales, can I say management control is still with the Government of India? That is called as minority stake sale. Second one is called as a strategic stake sale. In case of strategic stake sale, have a look at this. Government ownership in the company will fall down and it will also lose the management control. The ownership of Government of India will fall down and government will also give away the management control to somebody else. Sir, what do you mean by this? Let's say, I'll take a very simple number. Imagine Government of India owns 100% in a company. Hypothetical example, 100% in a company. Now, 51% will be sold to a private sector. Is it okay? 51% will be sold to the private sector. So in this example, question number 1, has Government of India's ownership reduced in this company? Let me know, has Government of India's ownership in the company, has it come down? Yes. Point number 2, has Government of India given away the management control of the company? Of course, yes. Government also has given away the management control. That is called as a strategic disinvestment. Strategic disinvestment. Third one is called as a complete privatization. Complete privatization. Complete privatization means extreme form of strategic. Right? Government will not only reduce its ownership, it will reduce its ownership to 0%. Complete means extreme strategic. You will give away the management control, no doubt, but you will not even own 1% in the company. For example, take the most recent one. Air India. So question number 1, has government of India given away the management control in Air India? Let me see. Has government of India given away the management control in Air India? Yes. It is the Tata company which has the management control. Are Baba, I am talking about current affairs. Are you people reading news? Are you people watching news or not? Why I am taking Air India so often? Yesterday, did Air India come out with a new logo? Maharaja's new logo. It was there in Hindu newspaper today as well. In all the newspapers it was there. Has Air India come out with a new logo for Air India? Yes, it was there in the current affairs. Right, so please be very careful. Right, watch news, read news, update now. So in case of this, has government of India reduced its ownership? Yes, but to 0%. 0%. No ownership in Air India. Second, has government of India given away the management control? Of course, yes. So that is called as complete privatization. Complete privatization. Government will neither have any ownership nor will have any management control. Fourth one is cross-holding. Slightly tricky. Understand this very carefully. Slightly tricky. Understand this very carefully. I'll take a very simple example. There are two entities which are both owned by the government. One is Power Finance Corporation. Second one is Rural Electrification Corporation. What is cross-holding? Follow this very carefully. Imagine this is Government of India. Government of India has two entities. It owns two entities. One is Power Finance Corporation. Second one is Rural Electrification Corporation. Rural Electrification Corporation will be sold to Power Finance Corporation. Very simple. Rural Electrification Corporation will be sold to Power Finance Corporation. Now, when Power Finance Corporation will purchase REC, they will pay money to Government of India. They will pay money to Government of India. This is called as cross-holding. Any difficulty? Let me know. Any difficulty? What do you mean by cross-holding? One entity owned by the government will be sold to another entity owned by government only. But when the second entity will purchase the first entity, they will pay Government of India. This is called as cross-holding. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Any issue? Let me know. Any issue? Maruti not explained. What do you want to understand, Maruti? Maruti was set up when Prime Minister was Indira Gandhi, Mrs. Indira Gandhi, and over a period of time, the company Maruti has been privatized, completely privatized. Maruti is not owned by Government of India now. Okay, so can you repeat the process? Okay, let me give a very simple example. Let me give you a very simple example. Okay. Imagine I own a car. Imagine I own a car. Now, I will sell this car to my brother or sister. They will give me money. All of you are okay with this system? Let me know. I'm giving you one example. Please do let me know. I own a car. I will sell this car to my sibling. They will pay money to me. Right? Because I'm explaining this because many of you will simply ask me, sir, how can government collect money? How can PFC pay money? Both are different entities. Government is different entity. PFC is a different entity. Government owns PFC, no doubt. But government's finances are different. PFC's finances are different. So process is very simple. Government of India owns a company A as well as B. So what now government will do is, government will sell A to B. Very simple. Government will sell A to B and B will pay money to Government of India. This is called as cross selling. Any problem here? This is called as cross selling. So government is selling the company, is collecting money, but look at the beauty of this system. Beauty, although there's a criticism. The beauty is Government of India leaving the complete, either direct or indirect, is it giving away the ownership of REC? Direct or indirect, that is very important. Right? Don't you think even after selling it to PFC, Government of India indirectly has ownership over REC? Not directly. It has indirect ownership, right? Because government owns PFC, PFC owns REC. So government is not giving away, right, the complete control. Now it will have indirect control over it. That is the benefit of cross selling or cross holding. In fact, the criticism related to this is, can you call this as privatization? Think of this. Can you call this cross holding as privatization? Is it privatization? No, this is not privatization. Privatization means private entities, that is non-government entities, should purchase this. PFC is a government entity only. So criticism is, this is not privatization. Okay. Now, last one is ETF. Tell me, ETF, did we discuss last week? ETF, Bharat 22 ETF, CPSC ETF examples. Through ETF, can Government of India go for disinvestment? In fact, I've told you this, right? Government of India will go for disinvestment using ETF as well. Okay. So that is basically how disinvestment will be conducted by Government of India. Any problem? Can we go forward here? Any problem? Can we go forward? Cross holding. Are Baba, how many times should we keep on discussing the same thing? How many times? If it is so difficult, by heart it. Government has ownership of company A as well as B. B will be sold by company A to A. A will pay money to the government. That's it. That's cross holding. I don't understand what is difficulty in this. What is difficulty? When you say cross holding is difficult, what is difficulty? Tell me that so that I can address it. Otherwise, 4 times we have discussed cross holding now. Right? If it is difficult, simply by heart it then. Okay. Next, imagine government will go for disinvestment. How the funds will be utilized? Please remember this also. They can ask you a question on this. How the funds will be utilized by the government. Point number 1, any amount of money that is raised by the government, it is not put in the consolidated fund. Remember this, it is actually pooled in one more fund called as National Investment Fund, NIF. I'll repeat it again. Any money that is collected by the government in the form of disinvestment, it is not kept under the consolidated fund. It is kept in one more fund by the name of National Investment Fund. If you ask me, sir, National Investment Fund, is it a part of consolidated fund? No. It is outside the consolidated fund. It is outside the consolidated fund. Now, for what purposes can you use the money from the National Investment Fund? For what purposes? Right? For what reasons can you use this money? Point number 1, Government of India can use this money for investing in metro projects, in central public sector enterprises, that is to purchase the shares of central public sector enterprises, to invest in public sector banks to provide capital. Recapitalization means again providing capital. So already Government of India is a majority owner in a public sector bank. So to again invest capital, provide capital for public sector banks, to provide funds for NABARD, regional rural banks, to invest capital expenditure in railways, to invest in atomic energy companies such as Bharatiya Nabikiya Vidyut Nigam Limited and Uranium Corporation of India Limited. So these are the purposes for which, right, basically the money will be used from the National Investment Fund. Anybody has a problem? Anybody has a problem? Please do let me know. Why disinvestment is part of finance bill? My dear, finance bill talks about revenue side of the budget, income side of the budget. Don't you think when government will sell ownership, they will earn income? Yes or no? Right? The disinvestment is nothing but revenue for the government. When government will sell, they will collect money. So automatically, finance bill, because it talks about revenue, disinvestment will be mentioned in the finance bill only. But money is not going into consolidated fund of India. So what? Right? Okay, money will not go into consolidated fund of India. So what is the problem? Right? Does any part, any article of the constitution says finance bill money always has to go to consolidated fund of India? Which article? Tell me which article? No. Appropriation bill. And that is a requirement. Appropriation bill, you will have to take money from a consolidated fund. Consolidated fund. That's the reason you will take permission. Finance bill talks about different types of incomes, whether it is kept with the government. For example, right, it will talk about cesses, it will talk about surcharges, it will talk about right, let's say different types of the different types of charges that the government will collect, different types of income taxes, different types of corporate taxes, right, different types of security transaction tax, capital gains tax. So all these income sources, information is provided in the finance bill. Income sources. Okay. Now next, the latest disinvestment policy. The latest disinvestment policy. Important, please remember this. I would recommend, if you ask me, I would recommend by heart this. I would recommend please by heart it. Right? Now, what is this latest disinvestment policy? Now, Government of India says, we will divide all the industries into strategic and non-strategic. I'll repeat the statement. Government says we will divide all the industries into strategic as well as non-strategic. What is the basic idea here? Strategic means those industries which are very much important for national security, using which government wants to achieve certain growth objective or social welfare objective, etc. I'll repeat it again. Government basically says those which are strategic, how do I identify them? These are very much important for security purpose, national security for me. These are important for me to achieve certain growth objective, welfare objective, etc. These I will classify under strategic. For example, atomic energy, telecommunications, petroleum, coal, other minerals, banking, insurance, etc. So these have been classified as strategic sectors, and others have been classified as non-strategic sectors. Now, before you start asking me, please tell me, can you think of any example which can be part of non-strategic? Before you start asking me, I'm only asking you because this happens in every class. Please tell me, after discussing so many things, can you think of any example which can come quickly like this at the top of your mind, which can be non-strategic sector for you? Can I say best example? Agriculture? Let me know. Best example, agriculture sector. Correct or not? Agriculture, textile, etc., etc. So what is the logic here? Why do we divide that into strategic as well as non-strategic? Argument of Government of India is, in case of a non-strategic, government will not have any ownership. I'll repeat the statement. In case of non-strategic, Government of India will not own any companies. No companies will be under the ownership of Government of India. So what if they are already present? They will try to sell it off. They will try to sell it off. Right? They'll simply try to privatize it. If it is not possible, they will shut it down. They will simply shut it down. And in case of strategic, government says maximum 4 companies will be in the strategic sectors. Maximum. This is the latest policy. When they will achieve it, I don't know. You'll have to ask finance minister when you meet her. So the government of India says in strategic sector, maximum 4 companies I will own. Whereas in case of non-strategic sector, I will not have any ownership of the companies. I will sell it away. I will simply sell these companies or close the companies. This is the latest disinvestment policy for government of India. My recommendation, buy heart it. Right? Please buy heart it. Right? UPC can ask you which of these are part of strategic sector now. This is a list of the strategic sector. Whatever is not written in the strategic automatically will fall under the non-strategic. Automatically will fall under the non-strategic. Okay. Now, two more concepts, then we can take up the questions. Couple of you are asking, sir, questions, when should we solve it? Two more concepts. We'll cover two more concepts, then we'll take up the questions from agriculture. Let's start. Two very important current affairs points here. Two very important current affairs points. One is National Infrastructure Pipeline. Second one is National Monetization Pipeline. Right? One is NIP, National Infrastructure Pipeline. Second one is National Monetization Pipeline. Point number one. Under National Infrastructure Pipeline, Government of India wants to promote the development of more than 9,000 infrastructure projects. More than 9,000 infrastructure projects. More than 9,000. Sir, where do we want to develop these 9,000 plus infrastructure projects? Right, these are some of the sectors. Please have a look at it. I'll tell you a very simple trick. For both NIP, as well as NMP. For both NIP as well as NMP, the important sectors are road, railways, and energy. Please remember these three. Simple, do not buy at the complete list, not required. For both NIP as well as NMP, right? For both of them, the most important sectors are these three. Simply by heart, more than sufficient. So in case of NIP, the number of projects by sectors, right? Basically, these are the various sectors, right? Road, railways, energy, etc. Now, point number two. If you want to develop these, right, let's say 9,000 plus infrastructure projects, you'll require a lot of money. Correct? Right? You will require a lot of money. And when you require a lot of money, how much money is actually required for developing these 9,000 plus infrastructure projects? Government of India has set up a target of more than 111 lakh crore rupees. Government of India says for developing all of this, you'll require more than 111 lakh crore rupees. Now, from where you will get this more than 111 lakh crore rupees? You will get it from state government, you will get it from the central government, you will also get it from private sector. So please have an observation here. From private sector, you will get 21% of the total investment. From state governments, you will get 40% of the total investment. And from the central government, you will get 39% of the total investment. Now, what is the objective? Why are we doing all of this? Why? What is the use of it? Simple objectives. One, right, we want to have world-class infrastructure even developed in India. Now, if you want to ask me, sir, any example of this, please tell me, have you read about the Delhi-Mumbai Expressway project? Let me see how many of you are reading current affairs. Have you people come across Delhi-Mumbai Expressway projects? At 8-lane national highway, this can be expanded to 12 lanes also, right? Uninterrupted transportation will take place. Time taken between Delhi and Mumbai will become half now, right? Petrol consumption will reduce, etc., etc. So can you imagine that and start talking about these objectives now? We want to have world-class infrastructure even in India. Second, higher capital expenditure will always lead to higher multiplier effect. GDP will also be affected in the sense the contribution to GDP will start increasing. Third one, it will attract lot of investment, right? Foreign investment, domestic market investment, private sector investment, they'll be interested in investing in India's infrastructure now. Now, it will also improve the quality of life for all the citizens. If the transportation time will come down, if consumption of fuel will come down, right? Don't you think quality of life for all of us will start improving? Right? So this is basically the objective with which we are trying to promote national infrastructure pipeline. Under this, the total investment target is more than 111 lakh crore rupees. It is jointly funded by the center, state as well as private sector. This will be implemented, right? The projects will be implemented during the time period of 2020 to 2025. Sectors such as railways, energy, urban infrastructure, roadways, etc. account for majority of the projects under the NIP. Any problem with the model of NIP now? Please do let me know. Any problem with the model of NIP? Can we go forward? In transport, railways and airways comes or not? My dear, you tell me. You please think of it. Do you think government of India will allow all the railways to be operated by private sector? Does it make sense to you? Think of it. Do you think government of India will allow all of these airports to be operated by private sector? Government will allow all these ports to be operated by private sector? Do you think it makes sense to the government? Or you think, as a bureaucrat, you tell me, does it make any sense to you? Of course no. Of course no. Only few of the routes they might simply give it to private sector, but government, because please understand, are the roadways critical for India's growth or not? Are the roadways critical for national security or not? Of course, yes. So that's the reason, right? So don't keep on asking, sir, tell me whether this will fall here or not. Tell me that will fall there or not. You just think automatically you'll get the answer. Okay, now, last concept for today, idea of NMP. Idea of NMP. What is this NMP? National Monetization Pipeline. Under the National Monetization Pipeline, please understand, government will lease out the asset, will not sell the asset. I will repeat the statement. Under National Monetization Pipeline, government will lease the asset. Government is not going to sell the asset. Government will lease the asset. Let's say hypothetically, there is let's say one office building which was constructed by the government, but right now government doesn't require it. It was constructed, but they don't require it. They will lease it out to a private sector for 30 years. Let's say there is a railway station. Government has constructed it. They will lease it out to private sector for 30 years. They will collect certain amount of revenue from the private sector. Airport was constructed by the government. They will lease it out to private sector for 30 years and revenue will be collected by the government. So understand the logic here. In case of national monetization pipeline, government is not selling asset. Please remember this. Government is not selling asset. It is simply leasing out the asset. And after certain time period, government will be getting back the assets from the private sector. So understand the logic. There is a term called as monetization. Many of you will ask me, sir, why the term monetization is used? Monetization simply means we are trying to derive a value from an asset. Very simple. Monetization means there's an asset. From this asset, we are trying to get the value from the asset. So that is the reason this is called as a national monetization pipeline. What kind of assets are covered under this? Again, the list is there right in front of your eyes. My recommendation, do not waste your time. Do not by heart everything. Same trick you apply. Power, railways and roads. Right? Can you have a look at it? Power, railways and roads. So these are some of the assets. From these sectors, assets will be utilized by the government, right, to lease it out and generate revenue. Now, why does government require revenue? What does the government use this revenue for? Government says, I will generate revenue. I will use it to develop other infrastructure. Is it possible? I will generate revenue, for example. Imagine government of India will lease out an airport to a private sector company. So the private sector company will give money to government of India. So this money government might use it for developing other infrastructure. So right now government says one way for me to get money for develop infrastructure is by monetization of these assets. Now third very important points here, it will cover brownfield project. Please remember the two terms. One is called as a greenfield and the second one is called as a brownfield. Okay, one is called as a greenfield, second one is called as a brownfield. What do you mean by greenfield? The project is started from the beginning. The project will be developed from beginning. Sir, any example of a greenfield project? I will ask you a question, please let me know. Imagine government of India will ask you to construct a national highway. Imagine government of India will ask you to construct an airport. Please tell me, is it greenfield project or not? Let me know. Is it a greenfield project or not? The two examples that I've given, please answer. Only two people are answering. Rest of you people are sleeping now. Right? Hardly half an hour is left out. Don't sleep. Let me cover this. After that, we can take up questions. So if I tell you, government will ask you to construct a road, government will ask you to construct a railway station, government will ask you to construct an airport, can I call this as a greenfield project? Answer is yes. But second example, imagine the airport is already there. Government will ask you to operate airport. Government will ask you to operate airport. So can I say this is nothing but the infrastructure project which is already existing? I hope you understand. Infrastructure project which is already existing. So whenever new project from the beginning, from the scratch, it is done, this is called as a greenfield. If the project is already existing, this is called as a brownfield. Now, airport is given on a lease basis for 30 years. Can I call this as a brownfield or not? So it will cover brownfield projects. It will simply cover brownfield projects. Okay. Now, right, what are the benefits? What are the concerns? That's it. What are the benefits? What are the concerns? Point number one. If an airport is there, government is not able to manage it, or they are not able to manage the airport very efficiently. They are having lot of labor, they are spending lot of money, but they are not earning sufficient amount of income. Rather than this, don't you think it makes better sense for the government to lease out the airport to private sector? Think of it, right? Rather than government itself maintaining, government will simply lease it out to private sector. So government doesn't have to be worried about operation. Government will get money. So one, right, the value of the asset will be monetized. Right, value of the asset will be monetized. Second, by giving this asset to a private sector, government will be able to raise money using which they can use it to develop other infrastructure project. Funding requirements of the government to a very much extent will be satisfied. Third one, if private sector will start operating airport, tell me what do you think will happen to quality of services? What do you think will happen to quality of services? Don't you think quality of services will start improving? Correct or not? Quality of services will start improving. So as a customer, can I get the benefit? Right? Can we apply the same logic to railway stations? Can we apply the same logic to public transportation, etc., etc.? So wherever private sector will come, they will start providing better services. So consumers will start getting the benefit. If this model will work at the central level, can the state also utilize the model? Okay, if this model will work at the central level, can the state also utilize the model to generate money, to raise funds? Of course, yes. Okay, now what are the concerns then? Last concept for the day. What are the concerns? Point number one, how private sector will identify where they want to invest. I hope you understand. How private sector will say, I want to invest in this project, I want to invest in that project under national monetization pipeline. Point number two, what if there is a corruption? Corruption in the sense, again, this is a concern. I'm not saying government is doing it. Please understand, I'm saying it's a concern. Meaning what? What if only one private sector company will get all the airports in India? What if only one private sector company will get all the railway stations in India? What if only one private sector company will get all the stadiums in India? So don't you think there will be certain concerns regarding transparency in the system, right? Transparency. So the problem here is basically, right, how the assets will be allocated, how government will find out what is the right value of the asset. If there is only one private sector company will come forward, think of it. Imagine this, there is one property, government owned property, both of us are competitors. If both of us are competitors, don't you think because of competition, government will be able to collect more revenue from whoever is going to get the lease of the asset? Think of it. Please think of it. Imagine there are two people, let's say two companies, both are competing for the same airport, which means because of the competition, if I tell government I will give 10 crore, you will say you will give 11 crore. I will say 12 crore, you will say 13 crore. Government will be able to realize more value from the asset. But what if only one company is there? What if only one company is there? Then how do you find out what should be the correct value of monetization of the asset? So transparency, value of the asset, right? Whether it will be allocated for multiple companies or only one company, etc. What about security of the workers? If private sector will take over the management of an airport, do you think they will continue to keep the same number of workers? Of course, no. Most of the times, private sector will go for rationalization of the manforce, that is workforce. They will reduce the number of workers. They will remove some of the workers. So that is also a concern. Third one is, if private sector will take over the management of the airport, no doubt quality will improve. What about the pricing of services? I hope you understand. What about pricing of the services? Don't you think prices will also start improving? Improving in the sense higher, which will affect consumers. In fact, please tell me, how many of you come across gold plating of airports in the last 3 days in the newspapers? Let me see. Gold plating of airports. Gold plating of airports in the last couple of days in the newspaper. Let me see how many of you have read the newspapers. Current affairs. Gold plating of airports. Now, if you ask me, sir, what do you mean by gold plating of airports? There's a standing committee report. The standing committee, check it in the Google after the class. Please check it. That's the reason I ask you people to read newspapers. I ask you people to read newspapers. Right? Until last 1 year, there is no discussion of gold plating of airports. Suddenly, suddenly, because of the standing committee report, this is there in the newspaper now. Next year in the UPC, he might simply pick it up. So that's the reason. Gold plating concept is not new. Gold plating is not new. But as a concept in the newspaper related to government activities, this has suddenly propped up now. What is the idea of a gold plating of airport? The standing committee simply says, do not construct unnecessary infrastructure in the airports. I will repeat the statement. The standing committee says, there is no need to develop unnecessary infrastructure, more than required infrastructure in the airports. Why? You tell me, if you develop unnecessary, not required infrastructure in the airport, don't you think the ticket prices will automatically go up? Yes or no? Correct or not? Please do let me know. The ticket prices automatically will go up. And when the ticket prices will go up, already the concern is that many of the people will not be able to use aeroplane as a mode of transportation because the ticket prices are very high. Now, if you create unnecessary infrastructure, this is called as a gold plating of airports. This was there in the newspapers. Please be very, very careful. UPSC can pick up these kind of questions. So again, come back to this. The private sector, if they take over the management, automatically price of the services will increase, right? Now question is, can people provide, or will it be affordable for the people? Next one, if private sector will spend money to take airport on the lease, don't you think the money that they will spend in other projects would be affected? I'll repeat the statement. If the private sector will use money to take an airport on the lease, don't you think other investments of the private sector will be limited now? Correct or not? Sir, how? Right? I expected how? My dear, imagine if you have 100 rupee, if you use 100 rupee to purchase a burger from McDonald's, how much money can you purchase on getting printed notes? Will it be limited or not? Apply the same logic. Right? Apply the same logic. Rather than investing in other projects, they will use the money to get an airport on lease. So other investments will become limited. And finally, if you're going to give this project on lease for the private sector, after the lease period is over, what will be the shape or form of the project when it is returned to the government? Sir, what do you mean by this? Imagine you own a house and you will give it on rental basis to me. After 3 years, I will hand over the keys, I will vacate the home. Do you think quality of the home after I vacate will be superior compared to 3 years ago? Think of it. The quality of the infrastructure, quality of the home will be superior to what it was 3 years ago. If you say yes, my dear, you are living in denial then. Fan may not be working, sink will be broken, right? The painting would be gone from all the walls. Some of the windows will not have any glasses, right? Some of the doors will not be opening, etc., etc., which means quality will be very, very inferior. So now the concern is, if you give this airport to private sector, after let's say 30 years lease period, when they return it to you, what will be the quality of it? Right? Will they keep on maintaining the same way in the last 1 year, or they will ensure that the whole infrastructure will deteriorate, then hand over the keys to you? That is also the concern. Done. So these are certain important concepts regarding the concept of national monetization pipeline. Okay, can we go forward? A home on lease is different than income generate building. Correct. You are right. What is the point? Any concern? Anything that I've told is a problem? Please do let me know. Okay. Okay, let's start solving the questions then. Let's solving the questions. Solve this question. This is a very straightforward question. Please do not make a mistake in these kind of questions. Okay, 33% have answered correctly. 38% have chosen B. My dear, read the question very carefully. Approved by. Please tell me. Approved means what? Decided? Correct? Please do let me know. Approved means what? Decision is done. Who will decide what is FRP in India? Arey Baba, some of you have chosen wrong. Who will decide what is FRP? Who will decide what is MSP in India? Can I say Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs? Anybody has a problem? Because most have chosen option B. Option B, that is Commission for Agriculture Cost and Prices, will recommend this. They do not approve it, they recommend it. And it is the Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs which will decide what should be the FRP. Who will approve what is the FRP? So right option is option A, Cabinet Committee on Economic Affairs. Any problem? Can we go forward? Okay, I'm happy. 60% have answered correctly. Economic cost of food grains to the Food Corporation of India is the minimum support price and bonus, if any, paid to the farmers plus transportation cost only. Underline the term transportation cost only. No. Interest cost only. Again, no. Procurement incidentals and distribution cost. All of you are okay with this? Procurement incidentals and distribution cost. Did we not discuss this? Please let me know. Did we not discuss this? If you say no, my dear, please look at the earlier discussion. There is one slide where I've written. It was not there in the slide. I've written it. Right? Procurement cost. Then I wrote labor cost will be there, mandi charges will be there. Then I said it will be transported into go downs where again expenditures are incurred. Then again it is transported and distributed. All these charges I said put together is economic cost of food grain. So what is missing? Procurement incidentals and distribution cost. Procurement incidentals and charges for godowns, right? Charges of godowns is part of distribution cost. Where is the transportation cost? Where is the transportation cost? Where is a margin for the distributors, etc.? Right? So option C is the right one. D is wrong. Okay. Next one. Okay, 62% have answered correctly. What is the issue? Let's start. Consider the following statements regarding the MSP of Indian government. Government of India started announcing the MSP in 66-67 for wheat, which was expanded to cover many more crops in the coming years in the wake of Green Revolution. Statement 1 is correct. I had said 66 and 67. Only thing that I missed to tell you is wheat. And if you've read regarding the concept of Green Revolution, we started with wheat itself. At wheat, right? Grains, high yielding variety grains of wheat were only used in India. It is a minimum price at which government will purchase the farmer's crop irrespective of the market price of the crop. Correct. Whatever can be the price, whatever can be the market price, the government will purchase this at MSP. Whatever can be the market price doesn't matter. Government will purchase this crop at this price itself. Okay, that is basically the second statement. That is also correct. So right option for the question will be option C, both 1 and 2. Option C, both 1 and 2. Okay. Next one. Okay, 40% have answered correctly. Let's start. Consider the following statements. In the case of all cereals, pulses and oilseeds, the procurement at minimum support price is unlimited in any state or UT of India. Do you think it is unlimited? Think of it. Do you think it is unlimited? No, it is not unlimited. There are a lot of restrictions over how much government of India shall procure, how much from which state. Second one, in the case of cereals and pulses, MSP is fixed in any state or UT at a level to which market price will never rise. Of course, no, there is no guarantee. Please remember, there is no guarantee. I'll give a very simple example. Whatever is the MSP of rice today in India, if the shortage in the market continues to increase, don't you think the market price of rice will be much higher than whatever MSP is? Let me know. I'll repeat the concept. It is there in the current affairs. I'm taking the reason. That's why I'll repeat it again. Whatever is the market price of rice today and compare it to MSP, please let me know. If the shortage of rice continues to happen in the domestic market, don't you think the market price will keep on increasing? Doesn't matter what is the connection to MSP, doesn't matter, it will keep on increasing. Yes or no? On the other hand, let's say in the next cycle, in the next cultivation cycle, supply of rice increases. Whatever could be the MSP, don't you think the market price will start dropping and it can fall even below MSP also? So that's the reason. Okay. So let me stop the discussion today here. We'll continue the discussion next. That is next topic. We'll continue the discussion tomorrow. Descriptive questions are there. We will discuss tomorrow. Don't worry. Now, before I wind up the discussion, if there are any issues, please do let me know. I've even activated live call feature. Tolls also come under NMP, my dear. National highways can also be leased out. National highways can also be leased out under NMP. Toll collection can be done by private sector. That is also allowed. Please repeat strategic disinvestment. Under strategic disinvestment, government will reduce its ownership and also give away the management control to private sector. It will reduce its ownership and give away the management control to private sector. Okay, that is basically the idea of a strategic disinvestment. Is MSP different for different states? Generally, no. The bonus can lead to changes in the prices that the farmers will earn, because one state might announce a bonus of 200, bonus for another state can be 300 rupees, which means obviously the amount that farmer will get by selling it to government will vary. When the class will start tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. As usual, Sunday, it will start at 10 a.m. only. Okay, Vivek, please receive the call. So if one person or family beneficiary of AAY moves to another state, then my dear, per person, generally it is assumed to be 5 people, 7 kgs per person, they will continue to get the benefit. Why sugarcane listed in MSP whereas it is under FRP? My dear, generally, if you look at the CACP website, which I would recommend, just check it. CACP website will list out all the 23 crops, including sugarcane. But they clearly say that for sugarcane, the MSP by government of India will not be paid. In fact, FRP will be decided by the government but paid by the sugar mill owners. Vivek, please receive the call. Okay, any other question? What if pandemic hits, then how volatility would be addressed with respect to food processing? How are you connecting pandemic and food processing? You tell me that. How are you connecting? Right? So both are different activities, both are different events in the economy. Right? You're simply trying to connect two unrelated things and you're trying to create an issue. Inflation can be addressed with food processing. That too, food inflation. Now your question will be next will be, sir, if crude oil prices will increase, how food processing will address that issue? No, I clearly stated food inflation that can be caused because of because of, let's say, the onion prices, because of tomato prices, By promoting food processing to a certain extent, we can address that. That was the point I was making there. Okay. Any other question? Leaderboard. Okay, Baba. Take it. Take the leaderboard. Accidental India, written by whom? MSIR. Accidental India book has been written by MSIR. Okay. Okay. Any other doubts? Any other questions? Any other doubts, etc.? Please do let me know. Otherwise, I will wind up the discussion. I will finish. I will close the discussion for today. We can take up the discussion tomorrow. NABFID stands for National Bank for Financing Infrastructure Development. It is a development finance institute. We have discussed this under RBI. Please revise it. 100% of it is owned by Government of India. Over a period of time, Government of India says will reduce it to 26%. But the objective of NABFID is to promote providing access to credit for development of infrastructure projects in India. Okay. MSP was started during Green Revolution. Yes, right. During the period of Green Revolution, there was a concern. There was a concern that production would increase. When production increases, supply to the market will increase. And when the supply increases, automatically the market prices will crash. So farmers on one side, they in order to promote green revolution will use high yield varieties, but on the other side will end up earning very less amount of money. That is the reason to provide certain cushion to the farmers. The idea for MSP was introduced. Okay, any other question? Any other question? Done then. We will stop the discussion today. Okay, we'll stop the discussion today. Tomorrow, we will basically pick it up. We'll basically pick it up from the idea of a globalization. We'll pick it up from the idea of globalization. And let's take it up from globalization. After globalization, we'll discuss services sector. We will discuss basically the other concepts related to industrial policies such as Make in India, Startup India, etc. After that, we will have a discussion regarding questions in agriculture as well as industries. Okay, done. Take care. See you tomorrow morning sharp at 10 a.m. Tomorrow as well as next week. Right. So tomorrow full day, Saturday. Right. So these are basically the 2 days that I will be completing the complete GS paper 3 syllabus with you people. Okay. So that's it from my side. Take care. Right. See you tomorrow morning.